Hello everybody, and welcome to the session number 11 for the course Business Research Methods for Business Administration students, which is going to be about quantitative data analysis. In the previous sessions, we have talked about the data collection instruments, and how we can collect the data. And in this session, we are going to talk about how you are going to analyze the data collected using questionnaire, or using the secondary data, or even in the experiment. So at the end of this session, the ILO is going to be that the students should be able to describe the quantitative data analysis process. So we need to understand how he can analyze the data. It's a step-by-step process. And also the students should be able to explain descriptive statistics and why they are used, why we use the descriptive statistics. At the same time, the students also should be able to decide which analysis technique suits research problems. So it differs from objective to objective. So when we talk about, as we have said last time in the research problem, when we talk about the impact or the influence, is different from talking about the relationship. So the different techniques, analysis techniques, depending on different hypotheses, different objectives. The students also should be able to, of course, after studying this course, test research hypothesis. So testing the hypothesis is one of the ILOs here in this session. And also the students should be able to discuss research's rule in interpreting the data, which is the last ILO for this session. Accordingly, the topics will be explained for this session is going to be stages of data analysis, data preparation process, and also the data analysis approaches. After collecting the data, when the researcher is going to collect the data using questionnaire, for example, or experiment or whatever, the data needs to be analyzed statistically in quantitative approach. So the researcher might use one of the statistical programs in order to analyze the data, like the SPSS, like let's say the AMOS or SAS. A lot of statistical programs needs to be used, but he needs to follow certain stages and certain rules, because the data analysis is a process, a very important stage in the research process, and it needs to be done carefully, and it needs to be gone or undergo through some stages. The first step in the data analysis, or the first stage, is preparing preliminary plan of data analysis, and then check the questionnaire. And after that, after checking the questionnaire, edit the data. And after the editing of the data, the researcher needs to code the data, because all the statistical programs are dealing with numbers, numerical, not with words. And then clean the data and try to clean the mistakes, errors. So clean it from errors, and after that adjust the data, and at the end select data analysis strategy, so you can analyze the data and come up with findings or results. In the data preparation process, it's going to focus on the questionnaire checking. So a questionnaire returned from the field may be unacceptable for several reasons. So some of the questionnaires are not going to be accepted for the analysis. There are some reasons for that. The first reason is that parts of the questionnaire may be incomplete. So when we collect the data using questionnaires, some of the questionnaires will come to you or to the researcher incomplete, so it cannot be used, and this is problematic. The patterns of the responses may include or indicate that the respondents did not understand or follow the instructions, so this is also can be problematic. The third one is the respondents show little variance, and this is also another problem. And one or more pages are or might be missing in the questionnaire because of the collecting of the data. And also the questionnaire is answered by someone who does not qualify for the participation, so the answers are not accurate. This is also one of the problems, and that makes the researcher check the questionnaire before the analysis. After checking the questionnaires, you need to edit the data. So the editing of the data is the process of checking and adjusting responses in complete questionnaires for omission, legibility, or consistency, or reading them for coding and storage. So we need to edit and then find out using the frequency techniques and find out whether if there is any problem or something inconsistent. We have two types of editing. The first type of editing is the field editing. That means we edit while we collect the questionnaire back. So at the time of collecting the questionnaire, we need to edit and find out if there is anything missing or incomplete. We'll get it back to the respondents, asking him or her to complete it. The second type is in-house editing. That means collecting the questionnaires, go home or go to the office and then edit the questionnaire. The first one is better because if there is any problem, at the same time you can return it back to the people or to the respondents and ask them to complete. The in-house, it is going to be difficult to return it back to the field because as we said, the questionnaires are not going to be the names of the respondents are not going to be written in the questionnaires. So the editing, after editing, we'll come up with some let's say incomplete questionnaire. So for the incomplete questionnaire, we have two types of incomplete questionnaire. The incomplete questionnaire in which the questionnaire is only answered, or the respondents has answered only the first section, which is demographics, and the second section, which is items about the DV, and this part is not completed. Okay, so this type of incompleteness, this type of questionnaire which is not complete cannot be used. Can't be used. Why? Because the variance is not there. The respondents did not answer the IVs items, and it is very problematic to take his responses with have answered with no IVs items. The second type of incompleteness is if the respondents did not answer, for example, let's say 30% of the DV items and 30% of the IVs, not more than this IVs items. So in this case, we can deal with this type of problem or this type of incompleteness. So we can treat it in different ways. The first way is whether we can discard the unsatisfactory responses. This can be used only when we have the questionnaires are going to be equivalent to the sample size or more. If less, it is going to be problematic. The second one is assigning missing values. So for this type of incompleteness, I can consider the incomplete items as neutral, as if the respondents were talking about some trying to say he is conservative, or he doesn't know any information about these things. The third rule or treatment is going to be returning to the field and collect more data, and this is also a little bit difficult. So this choice is okay, but when the missing data is only some items from both the sections B and C, which is the DV items and IV's items. After that, we need to code the as we say, the questions and the variables inside the questionnaires. Okay, so as we say, all these statistical programs are numerical and deals only with numbers, so the coding means assigning code, usually number, to each possible response to each question. The code includes an indication of the column position and data record it will occupy. So the coding questions is very important. So give numbers and give codes for the questions. The scale number is going to be the code for the questions. So after coding, data entry, we enter the data, transfer the codes from questionnaires or coding sheets to computer, so often accomplished in one or two, let's say, ways. Online direct data entry, this is the first one. So we can, if the questionnaire is online questionnaire and it's answered electronically, so the data is going to be gathered electronically. Or keyboarding, that means I take the questionnaires and I keyboard, or I enter the data using the keyboard for the computer. After coding, also we need to check the error in the coding process. In the coding process, there must be some some error appearing, so we can use the frequency analysis to find out any irregularities and check or double check the errors. So verifying the accuracy of data entry and checking for some kinds of obvious error made during the data entry. After doing so, we need to clean the data. The term clean the data means we check the consistency. So the consistency checks identify data that are out of range, logically inconsistent, or have extreme values. So we need to double check the data and find out if there is irregularities or problems, and then we can what we call check and take out some of the data which is not logical. So computer package like SPSS, Excel, Amos can be programmed to identify out of range values for each variable and print out the respondent's code, variable name, record number, column number, and out of range values. So extreme values should be closely examined. Now, the data cleaning also, there must be some rules or some guidelines to how to treat the missing responses. The first one is substitute a neutral value. I have just talked about. So I can consider that the respondents consider that or doesn't know anything about that question, or consider himself as conservative or neutral in answering that question. This is especially for Likert scale. Okay. Or substitute imputed responses and imputed responses, so we can find out the average of the answers for this question and both the same number, or the case-wise deletion, which is discard the questionnaire. Now, the data analysis approaches, which is the techniques used for data analysis or the statistical analysis used. So, as I said, mostly we use statistical software like SPSS, AMOS, and SAS. All these are a very popular SPSS software used for data analysis. Most of the researchers are using this kind of statistical analysis packages or software. So use the one of the softwares, and then choose the level of analysis that is appropriate for your research question. Then choose the type of statistical analysis appropriate for the variable you have, whether it is nominal, categorical, ordinal, or continuous. So the statistical analysis approach for the variable you have, to choose it from the beginning, because we have different types of variables, as we said, and accordingly different types of tests. The statistical level of analysis, we have different levels of analyzing the data. The first one is univariate, which is simplest form, describe a case in terms of a single variable, and also bivariate, in which we connect, we have subgroups comparison, describe a case in terms of two variables simultaneously, and the last level, which is the multivariate, which is the advanced, analyzing two or more variables simultaneously. So starting with univariate, simple form, and a case in terms of single variable. Bivariate, subgroups comparison, so two variables at least, here and here, single variable, and here the multivariate, which is analyzing two or more variables simultaneously, all together in one equation. The univariate analysis is describing case in terms of a distribution of attributes that comprise it. So one case in terms of a distribution of attributes that comprise it, like gender, number of women, number of men. You should always begin your analysis by running the basic univariate frequencies, and then checking to be sure data were entered properly. So the frequency is the means, the averages, a lot of descriptive, let's say, analysis is used here for univariate analysis. The univariate analysis types, like as I said, frequency distribution, okay, and measures of central tendency, and like mean, median, mode. So the descriptive analysis, as I said, what we call descriptive analysis, okay, and presenting the univariate analysis. The goals of it is to provide reader with the fullest degree of details regarding the data. This type of analysis must be done for any research, for any researcher and any research, because the reader of the research needs to know what is this about, what is this research is about. So to have a full degree of details regarding the data, screening the data, demographics or whatever. So whatever characteristic is for the population must be in this type of analysis. Present data in a manageable form and clear form. Also simple and straightforward. One of the goals for univariate is make it simple and straightforward. The bivariate analysis is the analysis we have just talked about, that it describes a case in terms of two variables simultaneously. So the relationship between two variables is one of the bivariate analysis, using, for example, correlation or regression or whatever, sample regression. So gender differences in job satisfaction with regard to gender. The differences, the statistical or significant differences between groups regarding one variable is also one of the bivariate. Relationship between the variables, like relationship between wages and jobs performance, for example, if we have to build a hypothesis like that. Differences analysis used to compare the mean of responses of one group that of another. And associative analysis, which is to determine the strengths and directions of relationship between two or more variables. The multivariate analysis, which is the much deep and advanced, which is analyzing more than two variables simultaneously. So like multiple regression, for example, which is going to find out the multivariate effect of different variables affecting one variable. So it can be used to understand the relationship between multiple variables more fully if we have different types of effects for one result or one outcome. And also typically used using the regression analysis, particularly the multiple regression analysis. It is predictive analysis that allows one to make forecast for what we call future event. And also the multivariate analysis has two types. The analysis of dependence, where one or more variables are dependent variables to be explained or predicted by others. So different variables as IVs and different as dependents. So like multiple regression I have just talked about. The analysis of interdependence also is another type of multivariate analysis. So no variables thought of as dependent, but look at the relationship among variables or objects or cases. So like the factor analysis, which is going to be used for developing data collection instruments like questionnaires and testing the loading of any item in the questionnaire, whether it can be used or not. So these are what we call the data analysis techniques and the data analysis methods we used. So the researcher, after analyzing the data, needs to write about the data and discuss the data. That means in the discussion, the researcher needs to interpret the data come as an output of the statistical program, and after that the researcher needs to compare between what he has, the result he got, and the results of the previous research or previous work for presenting and for making the added value clear, and for presenting his added value and contribution. This is the end of this session, which was about, or has been about, the data analysis techniques and the data analysis methods. So at the end of this session, I hope that all the students have learned how to describe the quantitative data analysis process, how to explain the descriptive statistics and why they are used, and also deciding which analysis techniques suits research problem, and also testing the research hypothesis, which is using the techniques of that the analysis techniques in order for testing the hypothesis, like what we call, when we use the bivariate testing, the relationship hypothesis, and when we use the multivariate testing, the regression analysis. Discussing the researcher's role in interpreting the data also was one of the issues we have discussed here. As usual, the assignment is going to be attached with this session and uploaded in the LMS. We come to the end of this session, and I hope all of you have learned how they can analyze the data, and they learned how, or you learn how you prepare the data preparation process, and how you have on how you are going to use the data analysis process in order to analyze your data. So we come to the end of this course. I hope we will see you in the next session. Thank you very much. Thank you.